Hey, what's up guys, it's Nick2. Today I wanted to show you guys how I set up my Lightning Spear Amazon build when I actually go to do pinnacle boss fights, how you can kind of optimize some boss damage just by swapping some very quick, easy things around, mainly support gems, a little bit of gear stuff, and skill tree stuff. And one of the most important things is how you can do this on a budget. One of the best ways to improve the boss damage of this character is by buying the Sacred Flame Shrine Scepter, which at the time of recording, a decent one is 33 divines. And if you're a broke boy like me, you're saving up for that. Currently, I am at, what is that, like 14 divines, so I'm a little ways away from that. And I kind of just want to demonstrate how you can do pretty respectable boss damage, easily get your T3 boss kills done, even T4s, without having to spend crazy amounts of currency in order to actually get it done, or swap your build around entirely, or level a Deadeye, for example. The DPS seems to be about 1.5 to 2 million, which is pretty good considering the fact that my character doesn't have like crazy GG gear or anything like that. And I'd say that most people will be able to emulate this and pretty easily get your T3 boss kills done. For most intents and purposes, you actually don't really need to do T4 bosses anymore, and T3s just are way easier than the T4s. The reason for this is that all boss levels have a chance to drop whatever unique you want. So for example, the Shrine Scepter can drop from a T3 Arbiter. The only difference is that T4 is just going to have a much higher drop rate, but you get all of your Atlas points from doing T3, so that's all you really need to do. I'll have a build link down below for this that you guys can follow. I'm simply just going to have a boss variation, but figured I would just make a video real quick to talk about what it is that I set up, because one of my friends was asking about this and I thought, hey, that might be a pretty good video because I do swap a fair amount of things around when it comes to boss optimization. So let's go into skill gems. One of the main things that I do for bossing is I like to put on a lot of debuffing related stuff into my infused weapon. So we do blind, so we get the additional accuracy, so we have more crit chance effectively. And then we do lightning exposure, so we have additional damage. This is going to reduce their resistance by 20%, but it also goes into the negative. So it's effectively just 20% increased damage. But we also take this node here, which is very good, giving you increased critical hit chance against enemies with lightning exposure. So that's quite nice. That'll be up on the mobs pretty much permanently. And then I have conduction, so that the likelihood of the lightning exposure is higher, basically just so the uptime is better, and there's not much else to really put here. And then I have overcharge. Overcharge gives you about 10% increased damage, however it makes you take a lot of extra damage because we are scaling shock magnitude. So if you are worried about dying, I would take this off. The way I've set this up is kind of glass cannon-y, but I've retained some survivability, so if you want to be a little tankier, it's easy to do so, and in which case you would just simply take off overcharge, because this makes you take way more damage as it reflects the shock back to you, so that's pretty bad there. So when we're actually bossing, Stormlance is our bread and butter. We no longer use Lightning Spear. Lightning Spear is just for mapping, right? And on bossing, it's not really going to help that much. This is what I've landed on. It's very hard to test boss DPS in this game, but I think this is the setup that I've had the most success with when it comes to just doing as much raw boss damage as possible, and that is using Overextend, so we get an extra crit damage, and this is particularly good because we're using Tangle Tongue, which has the benefit of getting forced critical hits, so you just get double crit damage, so another 30% here is extremely powerful. Then we have Blindside, so we have higher crit chance and higher crit damage against blinded enemies and we are blinding enemies via infused weapon with blind. And then I have Elemental Focus for just 25% more damage. Lightning Infusion. If you have Sacred Flame Scepter, then Lightning Infusion isn't as good. And then I have Primal Armament. Two other options for you are Deliberation, and then there's another one called Close Combat. Deliberation is pretty good if you wanted to use that instead of Lightning Infusion or Elemental Focus. That's perfectly fine. And then Close Combat is increased damage relative to how close you are to the mobs. So if you basically have to be really close to the mob to get the damage increase from that. It's about 25%, I believe. And on a lot of the boss fights, there's mechanics where you have to walk away and stuff, so it's not very consistent, so I would not like to use a support socket on something that is conditional, basically on me being very close to the mobs. That's how I have that set up. And then other things that you can do to optimize your boss damage. One of them is, so when you're fighting bosses, right, because Stormlance has a massive benefit from being frenzy charged, we want to have frenzy chargers up all the time, and one of the main benefits of getting the Sacred Flame is that you get an additional 100 spirit, and the extra spirit allows you to do cast on crit. But if you're only just trying to kill a boss real quick, you can do cast on crit anyways and simply just take off all of your other spirit gem related stuff. Maybe keep on Wind Dancer or something if you have extra spirit via your amulets, but if you don't, it's fine. You'll need 100 for cast on crit, and you actually only need 90 if you quality it, but I didn't do that. And then for cast on crit, we put in Sniper's Mark so that we not only get this massive crit damage bonus, which is really, really good for us, but this is also how we can consistently generate frenzy charges and basically convert the build into a one-button build. You can use Sniper's Mark manually, but you'll have to do like 3 Storm Lances, then a Sniper's Mark, 3 Storm Lances, then a Sniper's Mark. It just slows down your gameplay, and it's simply just going to make your boss damage worse. So if you put it into a cast on crit setup, it's just there all the time. And then I have Sniper's Mark, Perfusion, Ingenuity, and then if I actually were to, 5-link this, I would probably just put in Energy Retention and Impetus, but that is not necessary. And it would probably be good if I were to quality this, but I just didn't do that yet. No big deal. And then you'll see that I have a Scepter on. The reason for this is I just wanted another 100 Spirit. I have Herald of Thunder on. This literally doesn't do anything. I just had the extra Spirit. You could take this off and put on Wind Dancer or Ghost Dance or something. But another thing that I'm getting is Trinity. I also did not quality this, but I probably should have. But this gives you 9% more elemental damage with attacks per 50 resonance. Exactly sure how much extra damage this is actually giving you, but because I don't know how much resonance you actually get up to. If anybody knows the details on that, let me know. But when using it, it does feel fairly significant. It seems like I'm getting a fairly decent damage buff out of this. And I just literally bought some random scepter that happened to have int on it. I just bought it from a vendor. While I was actually doing the breach boss, I dropped this, and this gives you the spirit as well, but also 5% of damage as chaos per undead minion. And technically, I guess you could just like get a whole bunch of minions with the extra spirit that you have or something, and then a little bit of gain as extra damage chaos. Wouldn't be useless. There might be another scepter out there that I'm unaware of, but if you don't want to use a scepter with Trinity, another option for you is getting a focus with a whole bunch of lightning damage on it. This would just give you more overall damage than using something like Lycosade would, because you easily get crit cap when you are actually using Tangle Tongue. That's another easy way to get yourself some more damage, and the benefit of the focus is it gives you a lot of energy shield as well, so you could realistically tank some hits. Another thing that I highly recommend is using Conductivity paired with Cursed Ground and Heightened Curse. I could also quality this so it has more curse magnitude, and then I put this into my weapon set too. This is very min-maxy. You really don't need to do this because there's not very much additional curse magnitude here, but you could put into weapon set 2 points here into curse magnitude. So you just get a little bit of additional effect of the conductivity. And then we have Orb of Storms paired with Effigy of Cruelty. So we have Orb of Storms on weapon set 2. And then when we press our Orb of Storms, it pulls out the Effigy of Cruelty, which applies crit weakness. So we effectively had 10% increased crit chance against bosses, which is pretty nice. And then we support Orb of Storms with Font of Rage, so we gain access to Rage, which is a 30% multiplicative damage increase for our attacks when it is fully stacked up, which is pretty good. You get to about 20 stacks, so on average, it's maybe like, 10 to 17 stacks during the boss fight. So, a decent bit of extra damage. And then we, of course, use Barrage paired with Inhibitor and Premed. Inhibitor makes it so it doesn't consume charges, so if you just use this paired with a Frenzy Charged Stormlance, it'll do a good bit of extra damage. And then into any of the Spirit Gems that you have active, you can just throw in Precision, so you have the additional accuracy rating there. When it comes to other gear-related things, again, I'm using Tangle Tongue. This is just straight up your best option, unless you have a 100 Divine Sea Glass Spear, in which case you probably aren't watching this video. Gloves are a really good way to get extra damage because we're not using Frenzy Charge anymore, Combat Frenzy. And you're getting the Frenzy Charges via the Sniper's Mark. You don't need Kotokos, so you can just buy some random pair of gloves that has a ton of extra Flat Lightning, Flat Fire, Flat Fizz, Flat Cold, and then you can try to get crit damage bonus is pretty good for damage, or you can get attack speed. Both are pretty good, and you can get intelligence so that you can reach a lot of the attribute requirements. Another thing that's good is Ingenuity. This is a fairly good roll that I actually got myself and just corrupted, but you can actually get a decent Ingenuity for like less than a Divine, and then if you have rings that have a whole bunch of additional flat damage on them, I'd say this is probably the best item on my character, and I'm probably going to sell it because it's a lot of damage on here and the accuracy rating, but ideally you just swap to some rings that have like a ton of flat damage on them, and then if you're multiplying that with Ingenuity, that's just going to give you a lot of extra damage. Other gear, I have Black Insignia for Tailwind. If you wanted to go for something defensive, that's fine. The Tailwind here is just for the 30% extra attack speed, which is pretty good when you're bossing, I will say. Amulet, I anointed Harmonic Generator, which is really, really good. Probably the single best anoint you can get. Actually, I think it is the single best damaging anoint because you get 40% increased magnitude of shock, which is an 8% damage increase straight up. And then you get 25% increased crit chance, which on my Path of Building said this was about 6% increased damage. So this anoint is about 14% multiplicative damage, which is the highest anoint that I could personally find. If you don't want to swap your anoint for bossing, feel free, but I do think this is pretty good. Chests and boots, there might be some obscure unique that I'm unaware of, but I didn't want to recommend swapping like 5,000 items, right? You really don't have to do all that much. I would recommend using a normal pair of gloves when mapping anyways, once you get a lot of damage, because you can just use Combat Frenzy paired with Electrocute on your Herald of Thunder, and you'll be getting Frenzy charges enough anyways, so this is just what I was using regardless. But yeah, that's what I would do there. And then when it comes to skill tree, the only thing that I really swapped out of was Electrocution buildup, because for purposes of bossing, this is useless. And then I swapped out of the Herald nodes, and then I went into these 3 nodes right here for additional crit damage against enemies within 2 meters. On King in the Mist, I wasn't benefiting from this at all, so I could have just moved these 3 points into some random damage-oriented stuff. Could have went for crit chance or some crit damage nodes. That would have been pretty decent, or you could alternatively go into this and you could intentionally play from far. Another thing I did is I just went into all these shock magnitude nodes. These are about 3% damage each node, which is pretty efficient, and then this one is 6% damage, so all that is pretty good damage. The rest of the skill tree is essentially the same. If I were to min-max my damage like crazy, I'd probably take out all of these evasion nodes, and I'd probably be able to get better boss clips by just going into like way more crit damage related things, way more additive damage. I could just grab all these additive damage nodes right here, maybe a little bit of pen, but I probably wouldn't need that. These nodes right here I'd probably go into if I wanted to min-max the boss damage slightly more, but that's about it. Then jewels, another great way to get extra damage on your jewels is to get crit damage, and then let's see if I don't even know if I have one. You would ideally want to get like crit damage, crit chance, elemental damage or something, but magnitude of shock is really good. I unfortunately don't have one, but if you were to get like 20% magnitude of shock, that would be pretty good. But if you're using like a defensive jewel, now would be a good time to swap to a very offensive one to just get a little bit more boss damage. When it comes to the Ascendancy, same stuff as always. Penetrate, Pred Instinct, and Elemental Infusion. It might technically be better for the purposes of bossing to swap off Penetrate when you're using Tangle Tongue and then go into the crit damage Soul Cores, and then go into In for the Kill for the 40% increased skill speed. Not 100% sure, but again, you don't want to swap 500 things when you want to go to do bosses. Pretty much what I do is I would just have the Cast on Crit in your bags, and have Trinity in your bags, have the Scepter in your bags or something, swap it on, and then just swap your support gems off of Lightning Spear into Stormlance, and then just swap a few skill points around. You don't have to do all of that. You can still very easily kill the tier 3 bosses with just a few of the things that I've mentioned, but I wanted to kill a T4 boss and kind of demonstrate how much damage you could do at sort of the top end of a decently set up build that doesn't have Sacred Flame or 500 divine rings or anything like that. When it comes to like your boss rotation, what you actually want to do, basically you just put the conductivity on the ground. Because it has cursed ground, it'll stay there. You put the Orb of Storms down, and then you literally just spam Stormlance, and if you want to add in Barrage, you can to do a little bit of extra damage. Might not even be worth it considering the fact that you take time to cast the Barrage, but it gives you extra damage, extra projectiles. Seems worth it to me, but it's very easy to actually do. It's essentially a one-button build, which is what we tried to aim for. If you have any suggestions or other ways to drastically increase boss damage that I am unaware of, please let me know down in the comments and I will update it in the build guide. Otherwise, I hope that you found this helpful. Thanks for watching, and let me know if there's any other videos that you'd like to see from me. Have a good one, guys.